Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bex, I'm mum to Finley who's 10 months old, and I make videos about parenting, lifestyle and motherhood after infertility, and I upload twice a week. I'm now starting a series of videos called MUMHACKMONDAYS, so when you're searching through YouTube, if you just type in the hashtag MUMHACKMONDAYS, then my videos should start coming up. So today's MUMHACK Monday is all about baking hacks. When I left teaching, I had a really amazing year where I went and became a baker. I'd always loved baking and wanted to know if I could make it as my job. And although I had an amazing time and it was such a creative, fun thing to do, I just quickly realised there isn't that much money to be made in it if you decide to do that as your full-time job. However, I did pick up some tricks of the trade and I'd love to share them with you today. Hack number 1 is to keep your flour in the freezer. If you buy quite large bags of flour, you'll have to have somewhere to store them. And sometimes even in the supermarket, if they've been stored on the shelf for a little while, you can sometimes find little sort of grain weevils that end up in the flour, and it's only happened to me a couple of times in all the time that I've been baking. Flour mites are a natural, just occurring thing within flour. So if you put your flour in the freezer, that kills off the eggs and stops them from ever developing. The microscopic eggs, you would never see them in your flour, so don't get freaked out by it. And if you just, what I tend to do is decant the flour into glass jars and keep it in the cupboard, and then whenever I need to top up my glass jars, then I will just take the bag from the freezer and just top it up. The flour just stays very cold, but it doesn't actually freeze into a block, so it's just really easy to do. It means that I can buy flour in bulk or keep different types of flour that I may not use that often, for example wholemeal flour, and know that when I do want to use it, it will be as fresh as the day that I bought it. Hack number 2 is a handy way of getting your eggs to room temperature if you want to bake and you're in a hurry. We all know that room temperature ingredients are the best for baking with, so if you keep your eggs in the fridge and you want a fast way of getting them up to room temperature, then if you boil some water from the kettle, then top it up into a bowl with some cool water, so you've got some nice warm water, but it's, I would say, just above sort of tap water sort of temperature. Then you can pop your eggs into the bowl and then put a plate on top and leave them for about 5 to 10 minutes and they'll be room temperature and perfect for use. Hack number 3 is also another tip for getting ingredients up to room temperature, and this time butter. If you are baking in a hurry and you need room temperature butter, then if you take your butter out of its foil packaging, put onto a plate, and then put the plate over a bowl of boiling water and leave it for a few minutes, again it will be really easy to use. My 4th tip is to get prepped the night before if you're baking. If you're short of time, or particularly if you have kids and you're baking, just because since Finley has been born, I really quite rarely bake, and I think a lot of it is just to do with the fact that I don't have the time to be able to bake when he's awake, and I can't guarantee what his nap time length is going to be. So what I do tend to do if I'm in a hurry with baking, or if I want to get ahead and prepped, is to just prep all my dry ingredients in a bowl the night before and just cling film it. So put everything like the flour, the sugar, baking powder or bicarbonate of soda if you're using it, already sifted into the bowl. And where possible, if it's not going to affect the recipe, I'll also do the same with the wet ingredients and just keep them in a jug in the fridge. And then it's a case of just taking things out of the fridge a little while in advance to get up to room temperature, and then it's just a case of plonking them all in the bowl and mixing them together. Professional chefs and bakers tend to do this, and the technical term for that is mise en place, which is just basically a very fancy way of saying get your shit together. Hack number 5 is an easy way of lining your cake tin without having to draw around the tin. So I'll insert some footage to show you how to do it, but if you just take a piece of baking paper, fold it into quarters, fold the quarter sheet into then triangles. Once you have your triangle of baking paper, then use that as a guide against the cake tin to measure where you need to make the cut, and then cut it around the tin edge with a pair of scissors, and then open it out and you'll have a circle that's perfect for the size of the cake tin that you're using. Okay, so hack number 6 is an easy way of releasing your cake out of the spring foam tin. I tend to put the base of the tin in the opposite way to the way you would usually think. It just creates a little lip, so it means that it's easy for you to slide the cake off the cake base later on. And this is also a really great tip for if you're making cheesecake. So it just means you can get a knife between the base and the biscuit part of the cheesecake, and then you can just slide it off really easily rather than having to sort of put your knife in at an angle to try and do it. Tip number 7 is an easy way of minimising the dust from icing sugar wafting around your kitchen. Whenever you use icing sugar, you will know that it creates a fine dust around your kitchen, which can be a nightmare to clean afterwards. So an easy way of minimising that from happening is to either put a plastic bag over your food mixer if you're making buttercream and you're using the whisk attachment, or you can do the same just with a clean tea towel. Tip number 8 relates to buttercream. If you are making buttercream, a really sneaky tip to try and make really light, fluffy buttercream is to whip your butter first before you put the icing sugar in. This makes it lighter and fluffier and incorporates more air into the buttercream, and it also means that it will tend to go further as well. Tip number 9 relates to piping buttercream. If you like making cupcakes and you often wonder which nozzle attachment to use to create the sort of rose effect or to create those real sort of voluptuous looking cupcake swirls, then this is the nozzle that you want to get. This is a copy of the Wilton nozzle that a lot of people use, and this is a Gem 1B, and it's J for Juliet, EM, and it's 1B, and that's the one that you want to use to sort of create those real professional looking cupcake swirls. I'll insert a photo for you so you can have a look at this in action. Tip number 10 is my final hack. Whenever you're using buttercream to ice the outside of a cake, you will need to have a crumb coating which just seals all the crumbs in around the sides, and then you'll want to do another thin layer which will be your sort of final coat. So to do that, I would tend to say that you would need to bank on doubling if not tripling the amount of buttercream that it says on your recipe. That way you've got a decent enough amount of buttercream to make sure that you can coat the sides and the top of the cake generously to make sure that you can get a flat top and straight sides. Hope you've enjoyed my Mum Hack Monday video. Hit subscribe and the bell so you know when my next videos go up, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye!